All right. This is a presentation that I made here in Switzerland for a small audience, and I basically put together my 20 years of note taking experience into one presentation, and I thought I will just translate it to English and upload it to YouTube. And yeah, this is the presentation. So it's all about knowledge management in the age of digital. Um, Basically, from a Zettelkasten to startup owner is the title. So yeah, we will go through how I end up where I'm at the moment and how the note-taking process and knowledge management influence my company and also my personal life. So to start with, I have some opening questions here. So the question to you is, when did you had last time a great idea, um, but you didn't know where to write it down? Or you couldn't remember if you wrote it down, you didn't remember if you wrote it on a sheet of paper or in a Google Docs or in a Notion or anywhere else. So this is the typical process of having a idea coming up mostly during a walk or shower or whenever we are not actually trying to be productive. But yeah, we try to answer these questions a little bit in a systematic way so we can actually regain um, power of our own knowledge and also kind of nourish ideas from it. This is the agenda for this presentation, so I will quickly go through who am I and why I'm even talking about this. Then the problem that we are living in a distracted world with lots of information and even more now. So with AI generating lots of articles and videos even. So we will tackle it in four main parts. So we'll go through the foundation of note-taking, which is, in my opinion, like text files and trust. How a workflow could look like, how you take notes, how you massage them, how you maybe publish them, and how you can make a business out of it and even gain maybe a competitive advantage. And then also a short showcase of Obsidian, the note-taking tool I'm using. I might switch a little bit forth and back during the presentation just to give it a little bit more interactive. So who am I? I'm basically a data engineer. I pivoted into technical authoring and call myself an educator because I'm sharing lots of information on my blog. I have a second brain, which is basically the heart of my what I'm talking here about. And I also wrote a book based on text files and also based on my 20 years of note-taking and insights. Some highlights: I started as a business intelligence engineer, did mainly consulting, Microsoft and Oracle databases. During my apprenticeship as a computer scientist, I started my blog. Actually, back then it was not really a technical blog, it was more a website. I will show a little bit more. Then I lived 3 years abroad in Denmark to just gain new perspective, learn a new language. Then I worked at Airbyte, that's a unicorn in the US. If you work in the data space, you know it. It's like a data integration company that was worth or valuated 1 billion and more. And yeah, since a year, a little bit more than a year, I'm self-employed. I'm mainly working as a full-time author, writing articles and chapters on my book. And I live here in Biel with my family. And yeah, fun fact, I have like one meeting usually per week, and the rest is basically free time where I can think and create and write. So how got it started? So basically online presence wise, I started this website that you see here on the screen. This is it's a party website where I uploaded all the pictures from the weekend. So that was before Facebook or Party Guide. So I usually took pictures and uploaded them, and then people from my region here went up there and always commented. You could even comment, you could log in with a user. So it was quite powerful already. It was all built in PHP, HTML, and CSS. So that's how it got started, like kind of sharing wise, but note taking wise is how I started, like many of us as well. So where in the beginning we forget everything, we think we can remember most of the stuff, and something we do remember, but usually our brain is also very good in thinking, or like reminding us of our like past. But actually, if we would have written it down, usually it's not that correct. What we thought of is being correct. So yeah, later on, of course I take notes on paper, in notebooks, apps, and then but really the start was during my bachelor's degree in computer science, where I really had to structure the notes a bit more better because I had like an exams to pass, and so that was when I started with Microsoft OneNote. Here's a little bit more of my journey. So phase one is like paper. I'm still using that today, of course, but for different purposes. The big plus, of course, is there's no distraction, even more so important today. But then I used OneNote for 20 years. It has really better organizations. I could create like complex folder structure for each topic. So that was really handy. You could basically take notes and pictures, everything, even search the images with OCR. So not only text in your notebook, but also in the image was being found. It's automatically synced across all devices. So that's the good part. The bad part is, when you want to get out of it. So 5 years ago, I wanted to use Obsidian. And of course, I didn't want to lose all my 10 years of notes, some of which might have been not so useful, but most of it is still useful today because my whole studies was in there. But it's really, really a pain to get out of there because it's a proprietary format. So it's not like you can just export it. So it took me a lot of engineering. I wrote like Python script to export it to HTML, and then another script to exporting kind of to Markdown, which then I could use in Obsidian. It's still not perfect, but at least I had some of my data back. So, but now I'm using Obsidian. This is basically a plain text file editor, so everything is based on text files. And the big difference is you don't have folders anymore, though you can still have folders, but it's more connected, so you can actually connect the nodes instead of putting them into folders. I will explain that a bit more. And of course, I use it for everything, so it's not only like work, programming, it was also for writing, for my journal, for my life. When I had a dentist appointment, I would write down what the dentist told me, and so on. So it's been really great since then. Also, it's a system that basically grows with you. So the more you put into, the more you get out of it, which was a bit the downside of OneNote, because basically the more you added to it, it was harder for me to find my notes because I'm sure it's also better nowadays, but it's still I will show why it might be better in Obsidian. And it's also easy to publish because it's just text files on my computer, so it's really easy to kind of have control over them and publish them. And it's super extensible. There's thousands of plugins, so you can, some say it's a disadvantage because it can get overwhelming. But for me, it's definitely an advantage because you can basically customize everything you need. And there's also like a plugin for most of the things. That's how it got started on the left. So that was when a couple of nodes in, you see the connections. That's the graph view. So each node is connected and each dot is basically a node in my system. The right side, that's my node taking system like a year ago. So you can really see it's the red part is like my data engineering nodes, and the yellow one, I believe, was kind of personal. And then there's some in between, so you can add some coloring. But you see there's huge clusters. Some are very distinct, but most of them are connected, right? So that's actually also how life and note-taking happens to be. It's not either one or the other. It's usually very connected. So the problem that we have nowadays is like with social media, never-ending cycle of the news and AI producing more and more. It's really hard to keep track of what is important to us, also what matters to us. And then even if we want to store something or if we find something valuable, how do we do it? Where do we store it? And ultimately, we want to have a better thinking or a clearer way of explaining our thoughts, right? So for that, we need a system or a systematic approach. In my terminologies, or also in many others, this is the second brain, which in simple terms is nothing more than one note-taking app. So I say specifically one because when you write it down that you know exactly where to put it, not, okay, this couple of things go in Apple Notes, some go in Keep, Google Keeps, and then others in Notion, and then, so you need to have one note app. It doesn't really matter which app, but you should have one note that is on the phone, computer, and I would say also offline, because if the internet is down, or it's also a way of having your data, owning your data, so in case a company goes down, that you still have your data. And you basically use it for everything. That's why it's called a second brain. So you have your ideas there, you have maybe your health, your family related things, your business. So everything is in there. Obviously, if there's no like critical data that you're not allowed to have, but everything that belongs to you, you can write it down there. And if we ask who is it for, so I would say it's for mainly knowledge workers who work on the computer. Obviously, I'm a writer, I'm a engineer, so developers and writers are ones. Professionals like students, consultants, wherever you need to have like kind of keep your ideas. But I would also say it's basically for everyone, because everyone has a kind of family, a life, kids. You need to remember things. You have maybe ideas. So it's always good to write things down. So it's basically for everyone. What helped me also is like the 3 archetypes of note takers. So you can think of yourself if you're more like the librarian who kind of want to organize everything, right? Or you're more of a gardener. So you kind of, when you have an idea, you put a note. And then over the years or months, it will grow a little bit. And at the end, you have a full-blown article or a full-blown hardened idea or even learning. Or you have an architect who loves just planning and structuring. So you can be all of them, but usually you start with one. And that's also a little bit a nice view of how you can see it, not just as note-taking, but also a little bit like, it's like growing like a small plant, and then the longer you do it, the bigger the plant gets and the more you get actually out of it. So you might ask, why not just Google it or ask AI? Nowadays they're so smart. So I would say that's a bad idea, because AI cannot feel your experience. It has not lived through your experience. It cannot make your insights or connections. For example, if you read a book, you might highlight different parts than AI would highlight. So it's always a choice when you want to write something down. So there's something behind it. You had a conviction, you had like something that moved you, made you angry, or there's some kind of emotion why you wrote it down, and AI cannot reproduce that. So it's really your note-taking, which is that's why we must do it, in my opinion. Of course, you can use AI for like summaries, like for a better lookup or better Google search, generating diagrams and formatting text or grammar. I'm using it a lot to fix the grammar. But already in summaries, I would be a little bit careful if you like summarize. I still like to read the book instead of get a summary, and then I might get insights that are not so relevant to me or that not move me that much when I would have read it and write it down myself. So that's one differentiation I would make here. And then I would even say, why would you write manually, right? Or why would you still do it? Is also because of the case of thinking, right? Leslie Lamport said that if you're thinking without writing, you only think you're thinking. So writing is a way of thinking. So the moment you write it down, you kind of need to think about, okay, is this really true? How is it? Maybe you think you know it, but when you write it down, you notice, actually I have a gap in knowledge here, and then you can research or you can test more, and then you can basically learn. And I would also say if you stop writing, you kind of stop thinking, and then you stop learning at some point, and you also lose some kind of competitive edge if you have a business, but also just for personal life, right? If you forget everything and you need to always look it up online, it's also, first of all, it's less fun, but also it's just it's like you lose like the competence of knowing it yourself or looking it up in your system that has your connections and everything. So let's move on to the foundation. In my opinion, the big foundation are text files. So because we want them, if we invest so much time, we want them to be valid in 100 years. And the philosophy is like the file over app approach. It doesn't really matter which app you use, but as long as it's text files, it will be available for 100 more years. And it has been since computers are there, text files been there. So the likelihood that they go away is very small. So if text files go away, computers will go away as well. If you think about if it will be available in 2060, for example, of course, plain text file will be there. Markdown is also text file, just with some annotations. So there will be both, yes, but the OneNote format might be Notion databases. Who knows if someone acquires it and then they have another idea, or Apple Notes. Depends on Apple what they do. So we don't have really clarity or assurance if it's still there, right? So in my opinion, it must be text files or something we own, because if we put something really, really important to us down in writing, we want to have it still exist. Otherwise, we don't even start writing it down, right? If you're not sure if it's still there in 10 years, I wouldn't want to invest precious time to actually update it, right? So that's basically the baseline. And once we have that, we will also have like the trust. Then we can also write it down. So I also wrote here, like, don't write down everything, right? So write down something that moves you, that makes you angry. So it's also the process of what you write down. But before we write down, we need to have a system that is really there we trust. When the company is out of business, or like a couple of weeks ago when AWS was gone, I think most of the people couldn't access their notes, and or some people got blocked of their account, so they lost basically all their notes. And this is really a bad place to be in. Also, sometimes you can export them, but if it's like a database, the export will not be something you can work with, right? It's optimized for their tooling, so it's really not optimal. So the first, I would always look for something that is plain text and that is owned by you, so that we actually spend time and energy, and then we can also get the benefits out of it. This is basically also why I'm so passionate about it. So it's like the emotional investment. If I kind of sense it when I had 10 years of OneNote and half of it kind of wasn't usable anymore. So it was a bit sad, but at least I could export some data. So I don't want to have this happen again. Or if you write down your health log or your business ideas or even the first words of your kids, then this kind of data you don't want to lose, right? So it's really precious. Yep, that's why text files is the ultimate format to start with. It's open, it's future-proof. It's also very fast. That's like a positive to search for because the sizes are very small. Yeah, you're not locked in. It's on your device and you own it, right? So this is a short explainer. So we have plain text files and then we have the formatting, like Markdown. It's basically when you use Microsoft Word, you have the heading 1 and 2, or make it bold or italic. In Markdown, you can do that with specific symbols. If you do a hashtag, then that's like heading 1. Two hashtags are heading 2. And yeah, the cool thing is also when you use an editor like Obsidian or others, they usually hide this text, but the formatting is still part of the text. So it's also, if you copy things around or sync your data, they always contain the full text, including the markup. So it's also sometimes you bold something because it's very important, right? So you don't want to lose that part as well. So if you have a Google Docs and copy it into like your email, sometimes the bold or the italic is lost on you because it's yeah, the copying didn't work because the formatting is part of the tool and not part of the text. And in Markdown, everything is part of the text. So it's a bit hard to know when you don't use it, but once you have that experience, you basically don't want to work in other formats anymore. And yeah, this presentation was also all done in Markdown. And then, yeah, we have also paper. I still use that. I usually like to use it for brainstorming, or when I go for a walk, I just bring my notebook and not my phone. Or when I have like a daily to-dos or a journal. It's still very good to have that on paper, but everything that is important I will transfer into my digital vault because there it's just long-term searchable. And I want to actually develop the ideas. And paper is more like for trash or just for brainstorming. And then yeah, I take out the most important bits and transfer it to my digital place. Yeah, that's again a little bit the thing, right? Also, when you transfer from the paper to digital, you should always kind of not only copy it, but also kind of think about it and then maybe disregard unimportant notes. Yep, paper is great for thinking, not so much for long-term storage. And yeah, always transfer important ideas to your digital vault. For example, that's an example with this presentation. I basically started off with the paper where I have like a rough idea from part 1, 2, and so on, how I want to proceed. Then I wrote it down in my Obsidian vault. I highlighted and marked some important things. I referred some existing notes. And then, yeah, I transferred it to like a presentation. And then a special approach that I use in my Obsidian vault is Zettelkasten. This image here is basically the Zettelkasten from Niklas Luhmann. And he didn't have a computer or didn't use computers yet, so he had this small paper, so it's called a Zettel. It comes from German, Zettelkasten. Kasten is like this whole device there, or where you live with all the folders. And each Zettel had a unique idea, and then he just linked to the next Zettel. And yeah, that's how he basically created ideas from it. And that's what we want to build in our digital version as well. So usually in our digital world, we have this traditional approach where we have like a folder on folder on folder, and then we do a marathon training, and then we put that in running. But yeah, what if we get a running injury? Do we put that in personal, or do we put it in next to the marathon? Or so we always have this notion of where to put it, and the same friction we also have when we want to find it, right? So we need to know, okay, where did we save it? And yeah, this can get really, that's also where I think I lost most of my value of OneNote, because I didn't find the valid notes anymore because they were somewhere down in like 6, 7 folders deep. So I wouldn't easily find them anymore. There's also some research around the magic number 4. So you shouldn't have more than 4 levels, because then it's really hard for the brain to kind of remember it. And yeah, with the Zettelkasten, we basically, instead of having folders and subfolders and then the node, we have links. So one node can link to another node, and obviously can then link to many nodes or just one node. So I would always link it to at least one. And then, yeah, that's the difference. So you wouldn't even need to put it in any folder. I have a folder that's called Zettelkasten. So I can quickly show that. Maybe that's if I open my folders. So I still have 4 folders. I will explain them in a minute. But actually, I never use them really, because if I search something, I just open it. So if I search for Markdown, and then I'm jumping there, right? I don't go, this is somewhere now in my folders here. So I don't mind where this is, so I can just jump onto it. And then, or if I forget, okay, what is this? I remember it's connected to Markdown, but I don't know the name. So I then go to my backlinks here. That's all the links or nodes that are linked to this node. So then I can actually go there. HackMD, that's what I want. And then I can jump there. So instead of folders, you just use this mechanism. And yeah, and then you basically link with this double brackets. You can create a node. And so the whole organization is by connections and not locations. That's the main goal. There's also the notion or the principles of literature nodes. I will come to that later, but the main benefit of that is that you have one idea or an atomic idea in one settle. So one node should be one clear defined title. It should be like self-contained. This is also something you need to like sense a bit. So when I started out, or I still do that, I have very long nodes. And then, but if it happens, if I want to link to not the node itself, but to a subheading of one node, often I'll create a new node and then would basically link back, and then I can directly link to this new node instead of like a subheading of an existing node. And that's a sign to me, there is a new idea that is not self-contained, right? So I take it out and put it in its own settle, and then I link it back always to what basically what has created it. Maybe we can just do that quickly. So let's say we create a new node. We say example node for this presentation. Then I created it. Now I would add a template. So that's the first thing I do. We don't need to go in too much into details, but I use this permanent node that adds me like the date from today, some tags, and the title, right? So I have an empty node. Then I would always put the origin. So this one is like a knowledge management presentation that's basically the library of Beal. So I can add this as well. So now it has already a connection to this. If, for example, I open the local graph in a separate view, you can see this node that I just created has now 3 links already. So it nodes to the Stadtbibliothek, the library, the presentation that I made, and then the date is also, this one doesn't exist yet, but it just has these links because the template created it with like open brackets. So that's a kind of a link. And then I can really start writing. I can say, okay, this presentation is about Obsidian. And you see, if I want to make a link, I just double bracket, and then it will show all the links. And if I start typing, it will show me OBS, Obsidian lag, Obsidian Solar. So I have all the things. That's all my nodes that I have. So I can choose which one. And the moment I add it, it will show up in the graph. And the graph is like growing, right? So I can say Obsidian, and I'm using Markdown for it. And then I could go on Markdown, right? And then see, okay, what is neighboring nodes to this? So Markdown like connects to all of these. So there's like Go Hugo, and it's like, why is it connected to Go Hugo? Ah, okay, that's based on Markdown. So this is like how it works, right? So there's a backlink from Markdown to this page, and then you get this kind of second brain. That's why, because the nodes look like, if I, for example, make maybe the depth 2, so you see not only the next node, but the node above it. So then you see, this connects to this website publication, and that connects to that created in 2023. If I would go on this date, I can also see what I have created other on that date. So you can really have a really powerful history. So usually people say this graph is not really helpful, but if you use it as a local graph with 2 levels, then it's actually quite helpful. There's also like the Excalibrain. So this is just the same, but a different view. So here you have the same links you have on the same level. They're like backlinks. So now I know Docosaurus links to GoHugo and GoHugo links to Docosaurus. You see that here, right? Here is the link. If I go on it, I see the link. And all of these are like links to GoHugo. So it gives me some ideas, maybe some things I haven't thought about. Maybe some of them I have created maybe years back, 5 years, 10 years. But this really helps me in the process of creating an idea or developing. So if I go back to my initial node, so now I don't know actually how I named it. So it's like a presentation. So now I don't know how I named it. So, but I know I linked it to my library in Biel. So I can just open Stadtbibliothek Stadtbibliothek Biel, and then I can go back here and see example of this nodes links to it, and now I know it's this. So that was already a good idea how to use also links. So if a friend told you a tool or something, but you don't remember the name of the tool, you can go on this friend and then see the backlink, right? If you have noted it down. There is much more, but let's go back to the presentation. So we saw a little bit how the links works. We saw also backlinks, so that's basically links, other links pointing to one link. And then we have like a web of knowledge that emerges, right? We have like clusters. Sometimes you also see clusters of topics, which sometimes is hard to really, if you do folders, you have like a one-dimensional thing, because you always need to decide only one folder, but with nodes, you can link it to many nodes, so you get different clustering and ideas, right? So what a cluster can look like. Usually you see like your personal life and then your business, but there's always stuff in between and stuff that is not linked at all. So it's quite interesting even to go through it and just to get an idea of your own second brain, so to speak. And then the last point here is you basically write for your future self. So you always note it down. Sometimes you just have no time, so you just quickly write 2 words or 1 listing or 2 sentences. But you always write in a way that you in a year you find it again. So you put a good title, and then you also write the stuff that is actually important, right? Not the things that is obvious. Or usually I listen to my gut and then kind of listen what makes me happy, what is so insightful. You normally feel that, so it's more of a feeling than just thinking what is important. So it's, but that the more you note down, you kind of know what is important and what not. That's what I mentioned before. So the typical Zettelkasten has like fleeting notes. That is like you do like a temporary, like a very brief write down. It's a quick capture, and this can be deleted later. Then you have the literature notes. That's all the highlights and articles. Basically, you summarize in your own words. You maybe have a reference to a web article you liked. And then together with these 2 notes, you can then write your evergreen note, which is basically the permanent note which is written in your voice, with your experience, with your like fleeting notes, different things you got that you learned over the years. And then you connect that with other notes from your system. And through that, you get even more insights and ideas. And then you can basically build up like a blog article or a book, or just use it for work, or just remember things, right? So it's really powerful once you have the system. It's also something you need to learn a little bit how to deal with it, because I normally don't do the fleeting notes that strategically. I just start directly with like a permanent note, and then start with like preliminary notes. And then once I come back in 5 years, or even a week later, or when I really use it, then I will flesh it out and then transform it into a evergreen note. And the literature notes are basically highlights from the web article that I'm doing on the fly. So there is just in my vault from Readwise. They're synced in my vault. But yeah, that's also the process of doing it. So I'm doing that for a long time. So I have quite a good understanding what I need or what I want to get out of it. So, but I also changed it 2-3 times since I'm using Obsidian. So there's also no problem to change your approach. Then before I showed you the folders. So although I don't use folders, I still have some of them. If you go back here. And basically the idea here is, especially the areas, because these are things that always come back. So I have a house, so unless I sell it, that will always be there. I have my health, I have my family, some computer stuff. So these are recurring, my journal, my company. So these are recurring things that always come back. So why not just put it there? And then there's like the projects, resources, and archive. So archive is when you finish with something, or you don't want to have it anymore, or you can just move it out of sight, but still don't fully lose it. And although I have these folders, I don't really use them. So if I need to search something about my health, I will just search for Health Simon, and then I'm directly jumping there. And then from there I have notes linking out. So, but in case, in case you need something, and for example, like health, or like the health insurance and stuff. So I know exactly where it would be. I also don't, I just create it, and then with Command M, I can basically move it. So I can then put it in my health, or my markdown. So I can search. I have here markdown from my school. That's from my Obsidian OneNote from my studies. So I can then put it there. But I rarely do that, except if it's something very specific. But in the beginning, it helped me a lot, just to not get like too overwhelmed with no folders. That's a little bit a scary thing to do when you start. And then the magical number 4. So don't try to add as many folders in areas. Try to add as minimal folders. That makes things easier to find. Basically I optimize for finding, so not for storing, right? So yeah, you can just write it down, and mostly it's a good title and a couple of backlinks, and then you will find it again. Yep, the search philosophy. I said the traditional way is, where did I save it, right? So you have twice the struggle. Where do I save it? And then when you search it, where did I save it? So yeah, it's and 5 years later you might have saved it somewhere else. So it's really hard to use that way of finding stuff. So also in Obsidian, there's the search overall, but there's also the search just like the notes, right? Which is the one that is most important. Which I search the keywords. When I search a presentation, I search the name of it or the person. If I don't know the person, I look up a friend of it, and then there's a backlink. So it seems a bit counterintuitive, but when you have really a lot of nodes, this really starts to kick in. and I basically find almost everything within a couple of seconds because it's all local, it's so fast. And if I don't find it, I'll refine it. If let's say I search like 2 minutes because I couldn't find it, I know it's somewhere, but I cannot find it. I use the overall search, and then maybe at some point I find it. Then I will immediately change the keyword to what I searched initially, either add it or replace it. So in Obsidian, you can basically rename it. So if we go here back and we hit the F2, I can now say, okay, presentation Beal. Now it renamed, and also it renamed all the backlinks that points to this. And then next time when I open it and say Beal, yeah, it will basically show up as well. So it's now I have a lot of Beal stuff here. But if I presentation, so here it is now, right? So it's before it didn't find it with presentation, but with presentation Beal, I can then find it easily. That's how I basically optimize the search flow. It happens rarely because nowadays when I save a node, I have an immediate knowledge of how I will name it, and then later on when I refine it, I usually rename it anyway. And because Obsidian is taking care of all the links and automatically updating them, it's also no harm to actually rename them. One thing that also gets discussed a lot is like the differentiation between to-dos and nodes. So I would recommend to use to-do app separately, because the nodes is really for ideas, knowledge, stuff that is long-term, that you can like search and in a connected way. To-dos is usually, they're less important. They're adding no values, except that you need to have like a deadline. So it's better to use a tool that has that can create a reminder or like actionable items. So it's I use Basecamp for work. I use Nirvana for my personal stuff, and then I have Calendar, and Obsidian is basically where I store everything else. Some words to the writing method. So obviously everyone writes differently. I heavily use Vim motions, which is a feature that you can access in Obsidian. I will not go too much into it. I think it's the best way to edit text and therefore also write. So you have these 4 modes. Usually the normal apps, they have just the insert mode, right, where you write. But the Vim motion or Vim mode has like the normal mode, which is basically every key on your keyboard is a shortcut. So you can basically jump around, you can read, you can scroll, everything is in the keyboard. And only when you click I for insert mode, it will basically let you write. So everything else is just jumping around. So if I go here down, now I press J and K and it doesn't write anything, right? And then I can jump to Markdown, I can go back, go to Obsidian, go down, go to the next title. So it's all keyboard shortcuts, and that's basically Vim motion. That's why the cursor here is blinking. And that's the way I like to write and program. But I could have a full presentation about that, but it's something to consider when you write for a living or program, because it really helps after the initial hurdle of learning it. But also embrace the imperfection, right? Ernest Hemingway is here a good pictures. So you just at the beginning, it's just capturing the idea so it doesn't get lost. It doesn't really matter if you use the right word or if it's grammatically correct, whatever. So it's like you doodle, you sketch, and then later on you refine. So it's really important to capture it. Usually, if you don't capture it within the hour you thinking about it, usually in my mind at least, it's gone. So that's why I try to write it down immediately. And then there's also techniques, right? You can stop halfway through a sentence, and then that makes it easy to continue the next day. But to me, it's also just the matter of I don't need to start from a blank page every day because I have my second brain with all the backlinks. It's very easy to me to actually continue versus if I would have no second brain and just had to start like all my blog posts from nothing. I think that would be way, way harder. And that's when I basically do almost no research because the research is happening every day when I write down, when I learn an idea. And then through that, I have the idea is already formed in my head, and then I know exactly what to write about. Yeah, that's my writing process. And equally important is basically also to turn off sometimes, right? Mostly when you when you don't think about it, you get the ideas. Go for a long walk in nature or do exercising. So these kind of things also help me to solve problems automatically. Then the last part before we show a little bit more is learning in public. That's something I learned basically unexpectedly back in school when I wrote these summaries of like the exams. I didn't want to share it because I put so much time into it, but people kept asking for it, so I just shared it at some point. And then the magic happened that people actually gave me feedback, and then my private notes improved. So it was from that point on, I knew, okay, the more I share, the more I get, right? So that's Leonard Nimoy, I learned later. And the same happened with my notes. That's why if I write something that is not like, maybe it's not perfect, but it's also not like sensitive data, I just publish on my website or my second brain because I'm thinking if it's valuable for me, mostly I write it for me, but because it's valuable for me, it could also be valuable to others. And so that's really the power of sharing, is then also that you get like feedback, maybe even help if something is wrong. But what is most important to me is also that you get to know like-minded people from all over the world that you would never met. And I had many great connections made through this. And also business-wise, right? What we're getting to the next step is like you build your reputation, like kind of a portfolio, and it can lead to start a business if you have enough out there and people just like it. All of a sudden, you can make a business out of it. So how I do it in my notes is if I can show that quickly. If I add here, usually I do it here in tags, hashtag publish, and then I have a script that I can run, and then this will basically go on my website. So if I can quickly go here, this is my second brain here. So I have a make deploy, and this is now live. So it will now basically build the website. I can quickly check here what has changed. So it added this new example node presentation. If I go now on my website here, and then I have here my second brain, it will now, it's already here. So it's from today. And this is now the node, right, that I just added. It has a link to Obsidian and Markdown. If I click on that, these are massive nodes. So you would find here the Peel. Basically, they're already too long, not even showing up. But if it's a little bit shorter node, it would show up. You also see it here in the basically in this graph. So if I go to Obsidian, somewhere in this graph, you would then see it's connecting to Vim, writing, note taking, and then here it is. So it's now here connected to Markdown and Obsidian, right? It's in between. And then, this is another powerful way, right? If I share it on my second brain publicly, you also get this this graph, at least the one who are public. You see the origin, and that's just one word to how I publish. The benefits I explained already, right? You can have a feedback loop from people. Another thing is the accountability. Normally when you write in mind that you need to share it with people, you write a little bit more tight. My thinking is a little bit more rigid and better in some sense, because I know, okay, people gonna read this, so I might put a little bit more. It's a little bit pressurous, so, and that helps me to actually produce a little bit better outcome. That's something I learned along the way. And yeah, it's a showcase. Also, a fun fact, one of my most visited note is how I solve the Rubik's Cube. That gets now many views from Google every week. And it's just something I wrote down for myself, because when I learned how to solve it, I wrote it down for myself. I kept it private. But at some point, I was thinking, yeah, maybe it's useful for others. So I just share it, but yeah, nothing happens. And maybe now 2 or 3 years later, yeah, it gets indexed by Google and people find it helpful as well, right? So this is another thing. When you share, you don't really know what will like resonate with people or with Google or with AI. So it's also sometimes fun to actually share and just see what resonates. And then once it resonates, you can also expand on it. Right now, I know this is seen a lot. So if that is something of my interest, I could now go explore this topic a little bit more, write more notes on it, and get like the Rubik's writer expert. So it means that maybe there's a lot of videos, but maybe not so much writing. That's at least what my interpretation of it. So I could now write more about it. One way I also like to think about is like with the second brain, you have more like the continuous notes in mind. So instead of writing like best practices every year, you basically write one best practice on a topic and then you refine it every year. So this best practice, they will get uniquely good compared to when you always forget what you wrote last year and basically write a new one from scratch. I also think if everybody would do this, the internet would be a much more better place to read things, because it's kind of really redefined knowledge that has grown over the years, right? Compared to just, yeah, like a new note basically on the same topic, and then you kind of need to compare the two versions yourself. It's a little bit like Wikipedia that is continuously growing, but yeah, there is not, you don't really have a graph, although everything is connected as well. And it's also people together, right? But yeah, now you can have like a Wikipedia page for yourself and basically update it every day or every week, whatever you like. And managing my business, so as I have now my business for 1 year myself, it's actually fun how the entire business is basically also backed by my knowledge, by my second brain, right? Most of my blogs, they started as an idea somewhere when I read something or when I talk to someone. And then that also gives me ideas to actually write about that people might find interesting, because it's kind of a real idea or real problem or something. But if I wouldn't have noted it down, it would not exist, and I might not remember, and then I might just come up with another idea, but that is not really tested or came from a problem or from a person or from a real life event. So that's how I'm thinking right now. So this second brain is really valuable. If you, for later on, you might not know for what, but it will be at some point be valuable. Also, one thing I'm using is I use my Obsidian as a CRM. Every company I work with gets this template. It's basically the company name, potential work I'm seeing, or they told me. If we had like meetings, I will create a listing or a subheader in the log and kind of protocol everything. So I will not extend this node to a separate node. So it's like one huge node, and then I'll just go on and on and on. And then I have like every information about this company and my client in one node. But the cool thing is it's connected through a table view. Excuse me. And yeah, basically it have like a Notion kind of table view, where then I see all my clients sorted by basically hotness, right? How active is the client? I even have a sales funnel where I can see, okay, the initial contact is made, waiting for response. Yeah, so this is really powerful because this is valuable information, and it just lives in my Obsidian vault as basically as text files, right? So it's not somewhere in a different tool that I will lose access or forget to export. And yeah, sometimes we think it's not that important, right? When you call someone, it might be less important, but like some ideas, some topics you talked about, they're quite important. Maybe not for this relationship, but maybe for another idea of an article or yeah, you never know. That's the thing. That's why. And if you have this system, you will also start writing it more down because you know you have that system. If you don't have it, I don't know how many salespeople really love their CRM and actually putting a lot of stuff in there. They're more like filling it just because it's full. But if you have if you do it for yourself, yeah, then it's more valuable. And this the same can be done. I did also for books. So you have a list of books that you're reading. You can categorizing them by want to read and have read. So there's many basically approaches for this. And yeah, my unique value proposition, if you will, is basically my second brain because basically the ideas is where I get my money from, right? From my vault. I can connect unique experience from my writing experience from my reading. Doesn't need to be reading connected to business, but it can be reading whatever I read, from fiction, from what else. But that can have remind me something I'm writing right now. Or so this is the key here is that you write it down for your future self, but not knowing when and how it will help you, right? So you just write it down, and then basically from that and from the connections you make, it's very unique to you, and you can really create yeah, some insights and ideas. And even it's also fun to go through your journals, maybe even connect some notes. That's where people sometimes say, "Oh, it's just a job or making yourself busy, right? If you update your notes." But for me, when I read something interesting, it takes me literally a couple of seconds more. I'm already on the computer. Obsidian is always open, right? I just note it down quickly. Sometimes I spend 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes because I find it interesting. So I don't see that as really busy work. It's also different. I'm an author, so I kind of live from these ideas. So if I would be in a different line of work, it might be different. But yeah, just writing down your health log once a year when you check your pulse or when you go to the doctor, your kids' names or friends' kids' names and stuff like this. It can just ease your life a little bit. But in terms of business, it can really give you a competitive advantage because I know not everyone can basically go back and have such a wealth of information. I probably could write like 100 to 200 articles right now because my backlog is just filled with ideas. And this is also where AI can't really replicate it because it doesn't have this idea, this conviction, this soul, or this inner driving. It doesn't feel anger or yeah. So there's just no emotions. Yeah, and that's basically the unique value proposition, I think. It even went so far that I wrote a whole book, or I'm still writing a book about data engineering design patterns. So I have notes from the data engineering since 20 years and more. So yeah, it's just easier now to just make a book because I have most of the ideas. And yeah, sometimes I can see patterns. If I go back to some of my old notes, I can also make an example of how we did it last year or 10 years ago or 2 decades ago based on personal experience because I wrote it down, which makes it much more powerful than just coming up with something that yeah you never experienced or just read somewhere. And yeah, my book is basically written in Markdown as well, based on my Obsidian vault. It's even connected to my second brain. So every note, like business intelligence or notes that need more explanation, is just linked to my second brain. Yeah, it's all versioned in Git. And then like connected to this is also the Pathless Past. I recommend to read this book by Paul Millard. Is basically the way I also see how I came to this self-employment is more like following a non-planned way, right? The default plan is like go to school, university, corporate job, manager, and then retire. The Pathless Path is more like, yeah, learn in public, share your writing, and then see what's come out of it, right? You might not be able to know what it will come out, but something might happen. And in my case, for now at least, I have my own company and I have quite a lot of freedom, which I don't believe would have been able if I wouldn't have started writing in the first place. So the writing is the big part, and then sharing it, but also just continue to collect ideas where I can actually take ideas from. So the pathless path is like you can't plan it too much, so that's a little bit the frightening part of it. And as Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots afterwards, right? So it's very easy now to look back and connect the dots, but connecting them forward is impossible. Yes, I think I showed already some things, right? So we had how to navigate. I quickly showed, create nodes, Zettelkasten, graph view, publish a node I showed. So yeah, basically the templates maybe once again. So if I would, one cool thing is also when I have a good book here, you can go to Goodreads, and then let's say you want, I don't know, this book here, and then you want to add it to your second brain. What I do here is I have this addition, that's the web clipper. If you interpret it, it will do a AI to just write a short summary, but the rest is basically data from here. I can then add it to Obsidian. The title is automatically title and then the author. And now it automatically saved it to my want to read books folder. It added the author, the books. Usually what I do is then I say, okay, this person, or I don't know, Tim Ferriss recommended this on his Tim Ferriss show. That's his podcast, right? So, and then now I already have two connections. I have the books connection, I have the author, and then I just close it. For now, I will delete it because it's not really a book I want to read right now, but then I will just delete it, and then I could go back to my book overview and come back to it. I can, maybe I will stumble over it when I read something from Tim Ferriss or I see a connection from Tim Ferriss. That's one thing. And then maybe, let's say if I add a new client, so I can say my new test client. And then I have this CRM entry template. So if I put this, it adds this template. And here the same. So here some of the stuff is in the front matter. So that's basically properties or metadata. So that the table view can then use it to basically show it right in the, here I would need to change it, but in the table view I cannot show it at the moment because there's sensitive data, but in the table view you can then rename thing directly just by clicking on it. But yeah, I would here would add, yeah, they might want blog articles on on DevOps. I thought about DevOps life cycle similar to data engineering life cycle. So that's usually how I work, right? And then I say today, this person told me, or this person, and then told me blah. And then maybe some things about the company. Maybe I already have them in my system. I can say, yeah, found online. And this, yeah, stopped. This connects to my example presentation, right? So it's like, that's really how I work. And then it's in my CRM for my work. I can close that again, and then later on I will find it, right? I don't need to be stressed about if I find it again. And this is really a powerful way of managing your business, but also like anything else, right? If journaling, for example, journal differently. How I write daily notes differently. So this is also online. So if you go on my website, you can also see this. This is basically how I journal, maybe just as a side note. Instead of journaling every day, have like a note for every day, which gets a bit scattered. I write thoughts on, so I have thoughts on Vim, on jobs, on music, and then basically whenever I have like a career or a job, I go in this thoughts on note, and then I can continue. I see what I have written last time, and then that way I can journal a bit more on topic, but also it's nice to read where maybe the last note was like a year or two ago sometimes, and then I can see my state I was in that time. Yeah, that's how I journal. Yeah, you can also read a little bit more. I have like a reflection template. That one I do every year. If I this is a template, right? If I open a new note here, reflection template. Now it fills in all the connections, my principles, so I can review them, and then I can basically go, did I achieve my goals, blah, blah, blah. So I have some prepared stuff here. And yeah, it's just like the templates, and just having everything in one place is really, really powerful. And yeah, which basically can transform lives or create or get starting your business. So key takeaways: files over app, use plain text as a basis, so it's future proof that you own your data. Try to start linking, not for everything, but for ideas. It's really good to have links. Share your journey online if you can. And yeah, use AI, but not as a replacement for thinking. This is just a couple of steps you could start when you don't have anything. You could download Obsidian and start with one node every day, and then you could use the para method, right, with the project areas, references, and archives, and then you just start linking and see how it feels. Either it can also be that you don't like it at all, but then at least you have tried it and you give it, you know for sure. As always, the best time to start was 10 years ago, but the best and second best time is today. Here my stack, so I use Obsidian, and then Quartz is my publishing framework to publish my notes, so the one you saw when I hit make deploy. I use Vim Motions for write. I have a Basecamp for to-dos, Nirvana for my personal notes. But yeah, most important is really the Obsidian, and that it's marked down. And yeah, the thoughts, they're priceless. Final thoughts: don't make perfection. Don't try to perfect your organization as some try to do. Don't spend hours and hours to optimize. Just start and then refine over the time. Within a couple of weeks, months, you will have a very, very good idea of what works. If you liked what I showed, you can use my templates that you always add a origin, a time, tags, and references. I have not changed that within the last 3-4 years. So this really suited me well, especially the origin. So I always, if I have a good idea and then I come back to it, that I know where I got it from. So that's really, really helpful. And sometimes even when I come back is really, I can even read the blog post that inspired it, and then, or just a person, I can reach out to that person. So this is really powerful. Also the books, especially when you read a book, I like to get book recommendation, but now that I have them in my Obsidian vault, before I used Goodreads, but when I have them in my Obsidian vault, I can add to it, right? So now I know who recommended it, and then I might read a book because someone recommended it, or I will reach out to that person and tell them, hey, this book was really good, thanks for the recommendation. Small things, but they really add up, and yeah, can also sometimes lead to great relationships just by showing a small appreciation. Trust that your notes, you will find them, that you have one system that is consistent, that don't notes got lost. Link ideas together and really, compound knowledge over time. So it's really a long-term thing, not short-term. And then you can imagine 5 years from now, you will have a treasure of your own thinking, of your own ideas, and no one can really take it away. Yeah, here are my contacts, some links with the books that I really recommend. Yeah, thank you. And that was it. And I hope you find this interesting. And please let me know what are you doing different, or what you learned from this presentation. As said, I'm only sharing this because also I'm hoping to learn from you as well. And have a great day, and thank you so much for listening this very long talk. But I hope it's basically my 20 years of note taking can help you as well.